Good day, everyone. Today we will going to study chapter 1 entitled Identity, Local Wisdom, and Moral Formation. This is taken from the book of Asian Christian Ethics by Aldrin, Penamora, and Bernard Wong. Chapter 1 was written by Florian M.P. Simatopang. He is one of the contributor of this book, and he is an Indonesian theologian and ordained Pentecostal minister. He said, if there was ever a time when the word evangelical needed ethical redemption, it is today. This chapter seeks to present an approach to Christian ethics in Asia from the angle of the rediscovery of local wisdom that brings a sense of restoration and healing. What makes a Christian or an ethic Christian is that it leads to the concrete formation of the character of Christ. There are two major sections within this chapter. The first one is the survey of the current landscape of how identity and social ethics display and inform a process of restoration and healing. And the second one is a constructive proposal built around three themes. That is embrace, embodiedness, and restoration. With regards to the survey of the current landscape, a Vietnamese-American theologian, Peter Pan, maintains that the most urgent task for Asian church is to become the church that manifests a transparent sign of effective instrument for the saving presence of the reign of God, the reign of justice, peace, and love. He chooses to survey Indonesia and Philippines because he believed that Indonesians and Filipinos share many cultural similarities. One of the survey is about Joas Adisprasetya. Joas Adisprasetya is an Indonesian theologian who experienced living with the burden of rejection. I will tell you his story. For some reason, it was difficult for him to be comfortable with his ethnic identity. Because there was a scene in 1965 where they banned because they were suspended by having suspected by having a relationship with the PKI, or the commonly known as the Indonesian Community Party. The new ordained regime led by President Suharto implemented a massive assimilation program throughout the country. The Indonesians' diplomatic relationship with the People's Republic of China was frozen in 1967, and because the Indonesian regime was convinced the Chinese played a role in the rebellion. After Adisprasetya adopted the Indonesian name, like many other Christian Indonesian, he was subjected to a racial mistreatments, or among of them being made by the objection of racial slurs that made him feel like a clown. That is an experience that greatly traumatized him. To reconcile in his in-betweenness and bothness, he reflects on the character of Simar. This is Simar. He is a Javanese clown whom he finds fascinating and helpful in illustrating this concept. Simar is the main comic relief character in Javanese mythology. Adisprasetya identifies three commonalities among the clowns. Number one is maintaining the ambiguity, double-sidedness, and the ability to be a victim. On the other hand, he argues as well that this character is found in Jesus. First one is the kenosis. Kenosis meaning it is the self-emptying of Jesus that ends with his crucifixion fully in the eyes of the world. in the eyes of the world, but it redefines what power is from the perspective of the Father's kingdom. Like the commonalities and the clowns, uh, maintaining ambiguity means that, for example, a total otherness clown seems to always be in their own world. They are quiet, often misunderstood in terms of gender, typical received as rude or vulgar in the persons. Double-sidedness, the same as double-edgedness with Christ. They are almost the same because double-sidedness meaning that they can criticize and express solidarity at once. While Jesus as well criticizes structures of power, embraces those on the margins, the poor, the outcast, women, children, and by doing so, bringing liberation through the intertwining criticism and solidarity. The ability to be a victim, sometimes the clown, um, their common features as a clown is to be a victim and healer at the same time, meaning their role are as the clown is often involves becoming a victim and at the same time not only to be vindicated by also offering a healing to others. Like what Jesus did, he became a victim and a healer at the same time because in his suffering at the cross, he became the victim through the collusion and the religious and political centers of powers. Yes, he is a victim and also he become the healer. By the way of the story, Adiprasetya was able to make peace with this previously ignored identity and as ethnic minority in Indonesia. He said, by such acceptance, one can relieve from the bondage of marginalization of any kind. Next one is Septemi Lakawa. Temi Lakawa is an Indonesian theologian involved in conversations with people who experience religious violence. Her studies focus on how Christians can respond in the aftermath of religious violence and speak about the possibility of living peaceful, just, and reconciling life. He uses in construction with a risky hospitality. She employed 5 images used to analyze and present the complex and fragile process of healing and rebuilding an interreligious relationship in the aftermath of violence. Those are journeying, creating space, remaining, breathing, and extending hands, which he uses an illustrations, a dance movement that is embodied in the religious communities, various ways of reconnecting with each other. But the problem is that Lakawa didn't know how to dance because physically she was struggling with painful scoliosis. So she recalled she had a strong desire to give dancing another try, even though that desire came with a very frightening realization of the severe back pain problem that she has to endure. Though through the encouragement of her professor and advice from her physical therapist, she proposed a dance called the Dance of the Broken Beauty. This dance consists of 3 parts, namely obedience, suffering, and the desire for abundant life. This dance experience became for her place to begin to imagine the possibility of recreating and reconfiguring theology by connecting personal struggle with that of the struggles of the people and the churches in Indonesia. She said that her vocation is to witness the possibility of life, peace, justice, and reconciliation. The third one is Melba Padilla Magay. Melba Padilla Magay is a Filipino social anthropologist and social activist who has done extensive work around the interface of religion, culture, and development. Like other cultures, she said that she believes that Filipino culture is resilience, even though with outside influences, its core values and body structures often continue to exist unscotched. Mangan maintains that history conversion of Christ could be described as superficial. She has three things to make the gospel alive. Number one is that it requires renewed awareness of the power of signs and wonders to accompany verbal proclamation as the culture is used, correlating anyone's speaking for God. The second one is it necessitates a correction from the overemphasis of an individualized Western view of sin. And the last one is that the dominant image of Christ as forever suffering has not helped empower people. Finally, authentic evangelism requires taking into account critical cognitive differences between the Filipino and the Western mind. She said that keeping indigenous continuous will make evangelism effort more integrated and authentic to the Filipino people. The last one is Aldrin Penamora. Aldrin Penamora is a Filipino theologian who has done quite extensive peace-building work with the Bangsamoro. In seeking justice for the Moros, Penamora employs at least two different approaches. Number one is construct, and the other one is Christian rituals of Eucharist. The Muslim and Christian relationship in the Philippines commonly referred to as the Moro problem, that Christians in the Philippines have committed injustice toward the Moros. This system marginalization comes in form of economic destitution, political marginalization, religious intolerance, threats of Moro identity. Penamora looked into the Filipino concept of kapwa that emphasizes shared identity between ako, or self, and iba or others, offering a possibility to look at other person as a brother or sister. So in constructing Christian ethics of responsibility, everyone has a responsibility to treat others well and treat them like a brothers and a sisters. Christian ritual of Eucharist. This Eucharistic justice proposal is not about inviting the Moro neighbor to celebrate the breaking of the bread in ecclesiastical context. Instead, what he is proposing is that when Christians celebrate Eucharist, they ought to lament because of the injustice suffered by their neighbors. And the second one is to respond to the call to act justly toward Muslim neighbors. Penamora believes that to understand greatness and power are expressed fully by being the servant and slave of all. It was taken at Matthew 20:26 to 27. For the constructive proposal, there are three themes. It is that are an ethics of embrace, an ethics of embodiedness, and an ethics of Christoformation. Let's go to ethics of embrace. Christian theology understands that God is a triune God. Midas Paul views metaphor of reconciliation consists of four essential and integrated movements. Number one is that opening the arms. We have four: opening the arms, waiting, closing the arms, and opening them again. When we say opening the arms, it is an invitation so that we can begin to see others as those from Christ open his arms. It means that invitation means that we are creating a space for others to come. The next one is waiting. Waiting means that wait for the desires in the other to arise. We open our ears and prepare to listen attentively. Closing the arms, it requires two pairs of arms for one embrace. Should be two. And it requires a soft touch. We acknowledge, meaning that we acknowledge God's presence in the midst of those two. Last is the opening them again. So the arms are put around the other person, which means that we acknowledge our differences, everyone's differences. Ethics of embodiedness. Christian ethics must not be limited to abstract moral principles. Instead, it is a construct that must envision the holistic transformation of the people of God. Adispasete Adiprasetya experiences the encounter with the divine through Jesus as the clown, while Lakawa embodied practice as a dance movement of journeying, creating space, remaining, breathing, and extending hands becomes part of the physical healing as soon after the community. Magay, seeking to find a way for Christian conversion to move beyond the superficial, and Penamora, retrieving the embodied Filipino. Ethics of Christoformation. The telos of Asian Christian ethics is always about seeking the Christoformation of persons and communities. The process of Christoformation is always the work of the Holy Spirit, who has been poured out from all the to all the flesh, allowing all flesh to participate in the life of a word that made flesh. An ethics of Christoformation is the lens through which we can see how by the work of the Spirit Christ is formed it all. Daniela Agustin maintained that on the day of the Pentecost, the Spirit of God cursed to form the church. It is the fruit of the Spirit takes place in a person or community. We must acknowledge that a Christoformation takes place. With regards to my critique, the first part of the chapter, si Matupang draws a range of surveys including theological context, historical narratives, and anthropological insights to support these arguments. He chose to survey Indonesians and Filipino men and women because he believed that they share many cultural similarities. All of the surveys in the lives and experiences of Joas Ade Prasetya, Septimi Lakawa, Melba Padilla Magay, and Aldrin Penamora presents how they were shaped morally, both by the faith and cultural heritage, considering how all experiences are being connected with the life and experience of Christ. At the end of every story, they able to make peace, respond passively in the aftermath of religious violence, taking into account critical cognitive differences between two different cultures, and respond to the call to act just toward the neighbors, especially the Muslim. The second half of the chapter highlighted the themes, the ethics of embrace, embodiedness, and Christoformation. Simatopang focused on the Asian Christian ethics because he believed that Asian Christians can also be able to make peace with their cultural identity. Some evangelicals possessing that as against them attitude, and that is what Simatopang wanted to break, that kind of mentality. Ethics of embodied Ethics of embrace teach us the process of reconciliation and healing of self-identity. Ethics of embodiedness help us to act justly and be peacemaker. Ethics of Christoformation enabled us to embrace God's hospitality and adapt it. These three themes help us to understand the hybridity of cultures and accept the process of contextualization. Finally, it is a commendable piece that shed lights on the intricate relationship between the Christianity and diverse culture in Asia. This is a valuable source as well for scholars, theologians, and anyone interested in the intersection of faith and culture. Thank you and God bless.